Let me regale you with the tale of why I'm not driving an EV in this video. I'm driving a brand new 2023 GR86. And I want to give you my honest thoughts on driving EVs. I drove a Mustang Mach-E GT Performance Edition for about 9 months. And now, as you can see, I'm driving this GR86, and I thought I'd take you on a little drive and give you like my real honest impressions of it. So first off, driving an EV is not a bad thing. This is not a video that's going to be filled with negativity. I thought the Mustang Mach-E was a very, very good, very capable EV for what it is. But let me get into some of the main negatives that made me switch. The first thing is when you are doing road trips, and I admit I did a lot more road trips than the average driver probably needs to do, and you need to charge on a road trip, you're dealing with the network, the Ford network, which is really a amalgamation of a bunch of other networks. You can go to any of these chargers like Electrify America, EVgo, ChargePoint, etc. And it's sort of this open standard, I guess you would say, that is not like the Tesla charging experience. With the Tesla charging network, with the supercharger network, what you've got is a proprietary network where everything is locked in like the Apple ecosystem, where the vehicle knows exactly how many charges are free. It always connects properly. There's just never any issues. It's very seamless, and there's a lot of chargers along major freeways. Now, that's not the experience when you're driving any other EV like the Mustang Mach-E. So when I got the thing, I went and did a video with my GT versus the GT Performance Edition to see what the 0 to 60 was like. And they're pretty fast. Go check out that video. It's actually pretty fun. 0 to 60 in about 3.5 seconds. I never got there, but that's just basically grip. So I'm done with that video, and I'm driving back to LA. I'm up in the mountains, and I've got about 20% state of charge. This is literally my first charging experience that's not at home. So I punch into the big screen, the massive 17-inch screen, my first destination. It tells me, hey, go to this ChargePoint charger along the freeway. Oh, great. I'm going to go do that. So I get there. It's empty. There's 2 chargers available. At least it looks that way when I get there. One of them is broken, even though on my screen it's telling me they're both up and running. Okay, fine. So I go to the second charger. I plug it in, and I keep getting an error, and I can't figure it out. I'm there for, this is like 20 minutes. And so I make a call to the ChargePoint people, the very nice people who apparently live on the dark side of the moon, because that's how good the signal connection was. Shout out to Pink Floyd there. And I'm talking to this person that I can barely understand because the connection is so bad. And she's, after a few minutes, she's like, oh, this charger is really offline. It's like, well, why is it showing up on my screen as being online? So bad charge experience number 1. But now I'm at lesser percentage, something like 10%. I'm definitely not making it back down to LA with 10% charge. So I punch in the next destination, and I get there, and I think it's a Ford dealer, and it's after hours, and there's a truck parked in front of the charger, and there's nobody at the dealership. So like, that's not going to work very well. I'm iced out, as the EV nerds like to say. The EV nerds have a lot of phrases, and I don't really count myself as an EV nerd, even though I enjoy them. So great, now I'm at 6%, whatever the percentage is. I punch in another destination, and it finally comes up with one that works, and it works okay. It plugs in, and the first time everything is hunky-dory, and I got enough charge to get back to LA. But this is literally my first charging experience that is on the road where it's not at home, and this is the first time I'm doing this. And that's how much it sucked. It sucked a lot, actually. And I was an EV newbie, obviously, at that point, but everybody with their first EV is an EV newbie, and they're gonna have this same kind of bad experience that I did. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, it's also related to road trips. Hang on. Can't do that in an EV, at least doesn't sound as good. The second thing about road trips is that when you have to do a road trip for work, when you got to travel somewhere and you need to be at a certain place at a certain time, the charging experience on public chargers is not really going to work that well, because on the Mach-E you can go from 0 to 80% pretty quickly. You can get there in about 40 minutes, 10 to 80%, but you can't really go beyond 80%, at least with the current charging curves, because Ford limits you. So the total range is something you need to consider. So I had a trip where I was in Northern California, had to get down to Southern California, and it was over 300 miles. I think it was like 350 miles. And the actual range on the Mach-E, when you're driving above the speed limit, when you're driving, let's say 10 miles an hour above the speed limit, is 220 miles, let's say. And that meant that I would have had to charge twice to get down to my event. So I started in Northern California, I went down to film the new Nissan Z all the way in San Diego, drove across half the state. There's no way I could have done that trip in the amount of time that I had and made it. I would have had to charge twice. That would have been, let's call it 90 minutes of charging if everything went perfectly, which it rarely does. So I took my Supra instead. So if you are the person that does a lot of long road trips and you're on a tight schedule, it's just not going to work for you. So those are the main reasons why I got rid of my Mustang Mach-E GT Performance. There's a couple other reasons too, and I've got a whole separate video on that, which if you want to get deeper into my thinking behind this, I was able to actually make money on the vehicle because the market is so insane right now. Ryan, how insane is the used car market right now?
Pretty insane.
Thank you for your commentary. It's pretty nuts because, as you know, everything is way overinflated. The prices are, ooh, that squirrel just survived. The prices are ridiculous right now. And so with incentives and tax credits and all that kind of stuff, I ended up paying about $55,000 for my Mustang. People don't like calling it a Mustang. And I sold it for, I think it was $66,500. And so with credits and everything and tax that I had to pay, at the end of the day, I made out with about a $2,500 profit on my car, driving it for 9 months, 4,500 miles. That's pretty good. And that was pretty hard to give up. And I did that because the market is changing rapidly. Ford is ramping up their production. They're going to be selling a lot more of these. The wait to get one is a lot shorter. So I figured this is the optimal time. I'm never going to do better than getting, making a profit on the car, not even just getting my money back. So that was one of the big reasons. But there's some more. Let's talk about why I got this GR86 and why I'm sitting in traffic here at 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning, driving along a winding road in Los Angeles because it's rush hour. I got this car because it's super fun. I mean, that's the number one thing. This is a super fun car to drive. It weighs roughly half of what the Mach-E did. That's a 5,000-pound SUV. This little guy here weighs 2,800 pounds. It's light, it's nimble, and it goes around corners like no one's business. This has an amazing suspension in here, especially for the money. It's not adaptive suspension. This is just conventional McPherson strut up front. You've got a multi-link in the rear, and it's so good. Toyota has spent so much time and effort making everything in this car really harmonized. It works well. Do you freak out when I take my hands off the wheel? But going a few miles an hour right now. People have commented before. Does that freak you out, Ryan?
I mean, I'm okay. I'm pretty good.
He's pretty good. This is my cameraman Ryan, who is he mounted the camera for me today. So that's your job today. Good job. So this car was very, very hard to get. I waited 10, 11 months to get this car, and I got it at MSRP, which is why I waited so long. And here's the reason why I waited so long, aside from just all the chip shortage and the production delays, is that I wanted a manual. I wanted the premium version because the premium version for roughly $3,000 gives you a lot more than the base edition does. You've got really nice Alcantara on the doors, on the dash. The seats are really comfortable. Same seats, but you don't get fabric. You get a better sound system, which still absolutely sucks, but it is better. You get 18-inch wheels and tires with grippier tires, and you got a rear spoiler, which actually provides some downforce. So I wanted to get this car not in black, not in white, not in silver. You know me, I'm not into those super boring colors. Sorry, super boring people, you are super boring. So I really wanted to get Neptune Blue. Couldn't get Neptune Blue, it just wasn't available with premium manual, so I settled for a red one, and I waited so long that my 22 deposit ended up being a 23 car that I've now got about 500 miles on this thing, so I've barely driven it. And it's such a great car. It's got everything that the Mach-E doesn't. So this is a back to basics driving experience. You've got the 2.4 liter flat engine, it's a flat four, basically horizontally opposed boxer engine, and it makes a lot of torque compared to the last generation. This makes I think it's 184 pound-feet. I probably got that wrong, but it comes on at 3,500 RPM, and you get the torque all the way into the mid-fives. So driving it around the city at these super high speeds that I'm driving right now, it's really good. The last generation had this huge torque dip, and it was always, the car just felt slow. I mean, that engine was dog shit, let's admit it. Sorry if you're an original owner. Just not a very nice engine to drive, just really uninspiring, unfulfilling. This solves all those problems. I don't feel like I'm lacking power. This has 228 horsepower, but really it's the torque being such a wide, flat torque band. It's almost like a turbo in a way. And when that torque band comes on, you're in that nice fat part of the torque band for over 2,000 RPM, and that just feels really good. It makes it really, really easy to drive in the city. I don't feel like I'm lacking power. So a huge difference. And everything in this car is a 20% upgrade over the previous version. The steering is better in here. It's got a ton of feel in the steering. It really is very communicative. The brakes are pretty good. Actually, the brakes are the same as the last generation. That's one thing that could have stayed the same. The suspension is definitely improved. It's definitely more predictable. When the grip starts to go, it goes in a really predictable manner. And this car is a little bit tail happy. It's pretty easy to get the tail out and slide it around. And the overall limits are pretty low at a racetrack. And so that comes to my next point. I got this because I want to go back to the track and do more track driving, improve my driver's skill in a less expensive way than driving a relatively high horsepower car. I drove my BMW 1M at the track. I've driven my Supra at the track quite a bit. And when you're dealing with a car that has, 500 wheel horsepower, you go through a lot of brakes. You go through a lot of very expensive tires, big sticky track tires. You go through a lot of gas and ethanol or whatever you're using, and all that stuff adds up, and it gets expensive really, really fast, and that kind of puts a damper on track days. This is something that I'm going to use to compete in the 86 Cup, which is a competitive series. It's a time trial kind of series here on the West Coast and also in other areas, and there's different classes, and I'm going to compete in street class, I think it's called, or stock class. Anyways, it's the lowest class, and it allows minimal modifications to keep the cost down. So the things that you can't change are, you can't add aero, you can't add big sticky tires, you've got to stick with the stock width tires, you've got to stick with stock tires or SX2s, which is a fairly low grip tire. But the thing is, you're not going to spend a lot of money going through tires every couple of track days. You're going to go through maybe a set of tires over the entire season, maybe two at most. Brakes should last the entire season. You're allowed to upgrade the brakes, pads rather, and fluid, of course. You're allowed to do some reliability things, such as an oil cooler to keep your temperatures down, and you're allowed to do a couple of other minor things to get better alignment. So camber plates in the front, lower control arms in the rear, so you can adjust your alignment so you can get basically more camber and not burn out your tires. And that's it. That's all you can do. And that makes the car much more affordable to take to track days. And that's what I plan to do. And even here, like on this little canyon road, I'm just going at, a fairly decent clip here. And I'm not even getting any tire squeal because this thing is so light. The amount of inertia that this has is so much less than a big heavy vehicle, and that just makes it a lot of fun. This thing is really easy to rev match, like I just did right there. It's very easy to heel and toe. The pedal box placement is excellent, and this is just a really engaging, fun car to drive, and that's the bottom line. It's just a lot of fun, and I got it at MSRP, so my purchase price before tax and license and all that was about $32,500 with tax and everything out the door. It was around 36 grand, and that's a lot less money than my $70-something thousand Mustang Mach-E. Now, back to the Mach-E for a second. Operating costs on that, unbelievably low, unbelievably cheap to operate that thing. I was charging at home for 20 cents per kilowatt hour, which is some of the most expensive in the nation, but still roughly a third of the price of gasoline to operate that thing on a day-to-day basis. Really cheap. If you're looking for a great commuter vehicle and you live in the city and you're not worried about road trips, an EV is going to be your cheapest route by far. By far. I've got very few negative things to say about the Mach-E. I do have one thing to say, is the 5-second power cut. If you're not familiar with that, you get 5 seconds of full power, which sounds like a lot, but when you're at a racetrack, it's not a very good track car, after 5 seconds, you get a massive power cut and you're done until the end of your session, your lapping session, and now you're at, I would say, 60% of your power and torque. It was pretty frustrating. When you're driving the freeway, when you punch it, you got pretty good power and torque for 5 seconds, and after about 70 miles an hour, it just like drops off like a rock. So incredibly fast most of the time, but not when you're using full throttle. So those are the main reasons. I'm going to do a lot more content with this car. I'm going to do some light mods. First, I'm going to take you through the mod process. Gonna go take you guys to the track, show you what that's like, kind of walk you through all the performance basics, all the performance essentials about getting a car like this. So if you like that kind of content, please subscribe, give this video a big thumbs up. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.